This week was just as busy as like the first week of July was.
All right, so the first thing I want clarification on, because we were doing this like right before we went live, and I was like, well, why not? Why not just do this? Because I need the clarification for our listeners too. The contract, the 8-year contract extension, it comes with, we didn't know the trade protections during the show yesterday.
Right.
Charlie, what exactly are they? Because I was very confused the way you apparently got it right in your reporting. There were a couple different ways it was phrased. What are the protections in the 8-year contract extension?
Yeah, I think Kevin Kurz was the first one to tweet it out. I got confirmation a little bit later. It really only got confused when Puckpedia put out their tweet because my guess is that Puckpedia got the right information, but just didn't present it as straightforwardly as they probably should have. And they'll get better. We talked about it before the show that they have been the duty of becoming the new cap friendly has been thrust upon them. They will get used to getting these contracts completely right. But the first 6 years of the contract, there is a full no-move clause. And the no-move clause essentially means he cannot be traded without any permission. He cannot be traded to any team. He has to approve. And he also cannot be waived. That is what a no-move clause is. The final 2 years of the deal, the no-move clause goes away. It's no longer a no-move clause. It's replaced by a 14-team no-trade clause, which gives the Flyers the flexibility to theoretically trade Konecny, but it gives Konecny veto power on nearly half of the teams in the league.
And is that 14 teams he can be traded to or 14 teams he will not go to?
I don't know off the top of my head, but usually it is 14 teams he can't be traded to.
That's what I thought.
That is generally the way these clauses work. I can't say with 100% certainty that's the way this contract is, but generally it is these 14 teams I cannot be traded to, and they spell them out, and usually it's the teams you would expect in like the Winnipegs and places where nobody wants to go live. And then if a guy doesn't want to get traded, a lot of times what they'll do is the player will pick all of the best teams because he figures, well, if I don't want to get moved, I'm going to make it so if Colorado is looking to trade for somebody, they have to get my approval because they're a team that theoretically could be looking for upgrades at that time.
Yeah.
And
if not, they'll just pick all the cities they don't want to live in.
Yeah.
I mean, 14 at this rate, 8-9 years from now, there could be like 20, 30 teams that he could still be traded to.
They could go up to 33 or 34 by 2032, something like that.
I am positive it'll be 34 by then. We'll see if they go any further.
You think it's going to be what? Now I'm curious.
It'll definitely be 34.
We'll do an F around Friday. Yeah. How many teams are you expecting the NHL to have?
I mean, like in my lifetime, 100.
What?
Yeah.
What? No.
But it's by 2075. You don't think there'll be like 50 teams in the league?
No,
that's crazy.
I do not.
There's already too many.
There's not enough.
I do not think they are just going to keep adding teams forever. No, I don't.
Oh, that's crazy.
There's only 82 games in the season.
That for now.
I was going to say, now we're changing that to 86? Because that's what we've all been asking for.
European soccer. It just goes year round. There's 20 different leagues.
Boy. Yeah, why not?
Anyway, what was the other? So the other thing I wondered yesterday, and I think you came up with this, Chuck. This is, if he's lasts the length of the contract, the largest sum total contract they'll pay out. Mike Richards got $69 million, but they did once have a player sign for more.
Indeed,
Shea Weber.
It's just $110 million.
It's just that Nashville and Montreal paid it out.
Yeah,
and then
he never
Arizona
actually played for the Flyers.
Yeah, never played here.
But that is the most lucrative contract the Flyers have ever signed.
$110 million. That's wild.
And what? 12 years ago.
It is wild that they didn't get that guy.
$40 million less. It is wild how that when they put the cap on years, and it was like, we needed a rule
Homer was
to
crazy
protect
for that
GMs from themselves.
Yeah, not wrong.
And then they made all sorts of rules so you couldn't get out of them. It was like, but you signed these contracts, and now you're ruining the team because you. What anyway? So the Konecny contract extension, believe it or not, Flyers fans are divided on this.
Yes.
I'm shocked.
Can you believe it? Now, my big takeaway from yesterday was listen, I don't know if this is the best allocation of assets for a team that's in a quote-unquote rebuild. But I think it's about right money-wise. Like, I don't think this is a massive overpay.
It's
I think
not.
this is basically what he's worth. Yeah. And you kept a good player. Does he really fit the timeline? How is he going to age? That is a gamble. Like, this is just one of those gambles Danny Briere is taking. It's like, we'll never know until it's happening if it was a good idea or not. Yeah. Based on, like, the law of averages, it's not the best idea, but maybe he's an outlier. There's no way to know until it happens.
Yeah, I made the argument of, like, in my article, my breakdown that I released last night, it's like you're playing blackjack and you have 12 and the dealer's showing a 6. The math tells you should stay and bet that the dealer is going to bust because you assume the dealer has a 10, they're not showing, and then they're going to bust. You can hit, and there's a solid chance you're going to get a not a face card. You're going to get a 9 or less, and you're going to have a better shot. But on the whole, the math is in favor of you.
See, that's why I can't play blackjack. I would definitely hit on 12 every time.
Yeah.
It's not close enough.
It's not close enough.
No.
Exactly.
I said I can't. That's why I can't gamble.
Exactly.
I'm too dumb.
But my point is
no,
that
I get your point. Yeah.
Overall, if you follow the numbers, you're going to win more. The Flyers in this case did not follow the numbers. They went with their gut. It doesn't mean that their gut can't be right. It doesn't mean there are not a bunch of different scenarios where their gut ends up leading to a positive outcome. It just means that if you're purely betting on outcomes, this was a risk that maybe wasn't the smartest risk to take.
Kelly, you are one of the reasons I want to get more into not doing an F Around Friday today because you weren't here yesterday. And I saw some of your reaction on the old Twitter.com and wanted to bring that here to the real world. You know, YouTube, definitely the real world. How did you feel yesterday when the announcement was made? Travis Konecny, 8-year extension, $70 million.
I had so many thoughts. I actually made notes, which is remarkable for me. I didn't want to forget anything. So first of all, much like Charlie, I absolutely need to log off because it's extremely bad for my mental health to be reading your people's tweets because you're all crazy in a good way. So my thought is this. I don't know why so many of the online Flyers fans seem to be treating this contract like the Andrew McDonald contract. Like, freaking out about how objectively bad it is. Like, there's just nothing positive about this contract. You definitely should have moved him so that you would have cap space to presumably sign a player as good as Travis Konecny. I'm guessing that's what you would want to do with that cap space, but you already have him. So, like, my questions are these. What is the window? We don't know what the window is. We've all kind of presumed that the window is 4 or 5 years from now. We don't know that's what the window is, and we don't know that's what Briere thinks that the window is. Part of me thinks that, like, with Michkov coming over early, I know that he says that this doesn't change their strategy, and probably on a macro level it doesn't. But I do think it's like, if you're the general manager of this team, it would almost kind of be malpractice to not try to maximize the ELC years. So, like, maybe you're thinking to yourself, okay, maybe we try to push it a little bit harder than we thought we would because we've got these 3 years of this guy that hopefully we're going to have to give a boatload of money to in a few years. Maybe we see what we can do in this 3 when he's making league min. So, like, okay, like, if you think about that logically, I think that kind of makes sense. And then also, like, as far as value goes, if Travis Konecny for the first 5 years of this contract or so is part of the reason why Tyson Forrester gets better, is part of the reason why Morgan Frost looks a little bit better, if he's part of the reason why other players that are younger that we need to be part of the core of this team, if they take steps forward because they're playing with a player as good as Travis Konecny, and again, Travis Konecny is really good. Like, he's not a bad hockey player. He's not a mediocre hockey player. He's a very good hockey player. Then aren't we getting some value out of him that's a little bit bigger than just score sheet value? I would say, yes, we are. So I do kind of think that people just kind of need to, like, chill a little bit and just, like, think that maybe your idea of what this rebuild is going to be is not what the reality is. Because none of us know. Everyone's guessing. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what their precise plan is. And to be quite honest with you, if Travis Konecny not being that great anymore in 5 or 6 years is a big problem for this team, then the team's not good anyway. Like, he needs to not be a factor in 5 or 6 years.
I guess the downside, the real downside of this, which is always going to be the downside of a massive contract signed to a guy in his late 20s, is like, well, what if he just gets hurt and then stinks? And then they're screwed. But, like, that's going to be the case for any deal you sign.
And also, like, find me a hockey player who signs a deal at this stage of the game that's not bad at the back half of it. Like, 90% of them are. That's just how it goes in hockey every single time. It's just that with a guy that's already on your team, you're not overpaying for him like you would a UFA. But every one of these deals signed in your late 20s, first of all, they're always long because it's hockey, and they're always bad in the back half. I think like the ticket here is that Danny Briere needs to make sure that Travis Konecny is not one of the best 2 players on this hockey team in 5 years. Because if we're expecting him to be in 5 years, then everything's failed. And then it doesn't matter anyway. So, like, we just need to, I guess, at this point, there's no reason for me to yet believe that Danny Briere can't do this because he hasn't shown me anything terrible yet. And I know a lot of people are calling this terrible. He lost the negotiations. You should have traded him.
He didn't lose the negotiations.
I know, that's nonsense.
Like I am very open to the argument that they should have traded him, that he doesn't fit the timeline. This is why, like, I hate Twitter. I truly fucking hate it.
It's the
because
worst.
Like, I get positioned by some people as a defender of this move when I'm actually not.
No, you've said 100 times that you wouldn't have done it.
Because I think the argument that Konecny is a not good player is fucking bonkersly.
It's nonsense.
It's unbelievably stupid. And anyone who believes it is actively spewing moronic ideas. And I argue against that. Then people are like, oh, you think this is a good move? Like, no, I just think the idea that Konecny's a $6 million player is nuts, and you're wrong.
Right. It's nonsense to say that he's not an $8 million player. He is just objectively based on the things that people say.
Do the research.
It's nonsense to say that he wouldn't be like a top 2 line player on a good team. That's nonsense. I mean, like, there's just like a lot of people just like
spewing shit.
Yeah, all the way in the wrong direction to try to like make themselves feel correct. And there's also still this ongoing insistence on being negative about every single thing that this organization does in the hopes that one day you get to say, see, you idiot, see how smart I was? You thought Travis Konecny was going to be good for 4 years, and I was right because he sucks. Like, oh, cool. Everyone's lives are miserable right now because the team sucks. I'm glad that you feel good about yourself. Like, that's the only reason these people are like this. But anyway.
I've always made the argument that being negative
is the coward's way
to be a fan.
You are
because
correct.
If you're negative and the team stinks, then you can at least feel good that you were right. If you're negative and the team is good, who cares? The team's
good, right? So,
and only, as you point out, like, oh yeah, they're not going to win the cup this year. No shit, 31 teams won't. The chances,
that's the other thing.
Numerically, the chances of winning the cup are very low.
Yes.
Even like for the New York Rangers, an awesome team, it's like, yeah, probably not, because like no one wins. One does, you know? Like being negative, you're probably going to be right, because the good thing is the rare outcome.
31 times you're correct. Cool, good job. I just feel like, can't we for 5 seconds just enjoy that we have good players on our hockey team? And that's fun. We've had so much fucking boring, miserable hockey over the last 5 or 6 years.
He's a fun player to watch.
He's
which is
fun.
Like, you know, Danny did say the other day, we are in the entertainment business. And like, and that's one thing I do appreciate here. And like, just trying to, because again, I'm not totally sold on this, but I'm trying to, I always say, I don't need to agree with you, but if I can see your logic, then I can be like, all right, I get it. Yeah. And what I'm starting to think is, like I've said a few times, this might take a little longer than we thought. They are putting a whole lot of stock into the idea of, we got to get these young kids playing meaningful games, and that's the only way they're going to learn to become winners, is playing in these meaningful games. To get that to happen, I don't know if anyone's ever paid attention, but young teams don't win shit. Like, young teams, even with really good, like Connor McDavid missed the playoffs like 4 of his first 5 years. He might be the best player of all fucking time.
Yeah.
Like, it's very rare young teams win. To get these players in a position, Matvei Michkov, yeah, maybe he's an exception because he's amazing, but Tyson Forster, even Owen Tippett, Cam York, these guys in position to learn how to play these games, they're going to need these vets around to kind of get them those couple extra points throughout the season that keep them in that contention so that maybe they make the playoffs. Maybe they learn what playoff hockey is. And I'm seeing this kind of coming in two waves. Like, there's going to be a point where they're third in the division. They're a wild card team. That's kind of where, and that's probably more in the front half of this Travis Konecny contract. Mm-hmm. And he's the catalyst for that. And then in the back half, it's like, yeah, we're overpaying him. But we have a whole bunch of these young guys that came up through this organization that won some stuff early. And now they are ready to take the next step. And he gets to be the Jamie Benn Tyler Seguin.
Exactly.
Yeah, is he overpaid? Definitely. But he's still good. And we have all these other dudes that we can play them third line minutes.
Yeah, I guess where Bill, I would not be shocked if that is their entire idea, is that they look at it as, in the first half of the deal, we might not be a cup contender, but we think we'll be a playoff team if we have Konecny. If we don't necessarily think we will be. If we have someone like Konecny, we have a better chance of being a playoff team. And even if we don't have any real chance of winning a cup, we think that young players are going to benefit from being on a competitive, playoff relevant team. I fundamentally disagree with that. Like, I just fundamentally disagree with that philosophy. I think the Flyers would benefit significantly more from having higher draft picks over that run than losing in 5 games to the Rangers 2 straight years.
I agree.
I fundamentally disagree with that premise, which is why I look at it as the only way this Konecny deal works for me is if A, they're much better in the front half of the deal than I think they're going to be, which, like, they could be. If Danny has a great off, and you spoke to this, like, if Danny has a great offseason next summer and then a great offseason in 2026 and they make some big trades and maybe they get lucky with some prospects who develop quicker than expected, and then by year 2, the Flyers are where the Devils were going into last season, where you're like, hey, we could, few things break their way, they could win it all. Then the Konecny deal makes perfect sense to me. And then B is if he just ages really well, which, not out of the realm of possibility. It's not terribly likely based on the way this usually works,
right?
But it could happen. He could be 33 and still real good. And then boom, we'll be looking back on this day and say, man, Danny made the right bet. You know, he bet on this guy staying healthy and staying in shape and having the competitiveness to find ways to succeed even as his physical abilities dip a bit. Then we're going to be like, that was a great move. But if one of those two scenarios, or both, that would be, I guess, ideal. If one of those two scenarios doesn't play out, I do not think this contract works for me. Mm-hmm. And that is in part because I don't really see the value. And I know, I'm certain the Flyers do. They see the value in getting to the playoffs and losing a couple times in blowout fashion because they learn. I don't think that matters that much. I think when you're ready to win, you win. And then you either sink or you swim. But that's my personal opinion. I don't think I'm necessarily right or wrong. That's just my personal opinion.
I just don't think, like, 2 years from now we're talking about, like, what the Capitals were in the playoffs this year. Like, I think they are a competitive team that could win a round or two. Are they cup contenders? No. But I do think there is a difference between getting in and having a chance to maybe go on a little bit of a run or just being a bad team that happens to be there.
Right.
Like, I don't think they will be in position to, they're in because the East stinks. Like, that's not what I think they're thinking. But no, I have said time and time again, I would like to have seen this thing torn down, but that is not the reality we're living in. Yeah. So I can't just I can't do a show based on some alternate reality.
I mean, for the record, I would not have signed Travis Konecny for 8 years. If I were playing NHL GM mode, I would have traded him for a really good center, and that would have been cool. I don't.
Oh, you got to turn the cap off if you're playing.
I don't really think it's that easy in real life, but then again, what do I know? But that said, I don't think this is detrimental to the team in the short term at all.
It's not. Not in the short term.
I don't think it's going to be a breaker in the long term. I think it might be like, I wish we weren't paying Travis Konecny $8 million, but I can't see it being like, God, this is ruining our lives. This albatross of a contract that we can't get rid of. Like, I don't think it's going to be that.
But it could. So, like, look at how we're viewing the Couturier contract.
It could. Right, if he gets hurt, like, that's the big one, is getting hurt. But, like, literally, that's a gamble with every single guy that takes the ice. Every single one of these guys could have a career-ending injury at any moment. Like, that could happen.
It's just not every guy that hits the ice has an 8-year contract.
Understandable.
That's the
I don't think it's as bad as people want it to be. Would I have done it? Probably not. That said, I don't know how hard it is to trade for a center. It seems like it's probably hard. People like having good centers. There's probably not a ton of them available on the market. Maybe Anaheim didn't want an old man winger, and so we couldn't get Trevor Zegras in this particular deal. I don't know. But like, I think everyone needs to just like chill for a second. Like, it's fine.
We all silly like the mayor.